In this demo, we're going to look at another example of requesting JSON data from the Open Weather Map API. We have VS Code open, and we're going to create a new file called weather.py. Then to use the Open Weather API, let's go to their website at openweathermap.org to see where to start. We can scroll down to the APIs section and click on the Easy to Use APIs link. Here it says we need to sign up to use it for free, so I'm going to open this sign up page in a new tab. You can see it asks for your email address and a few other things and to agree with their privacy policy. I actually created an account earlier, so I'm going to log in and show you what that looks like. Once you log in, you can see the API keys in the menu. Then the API key is what you need to be able to request data from their API, and a lot of APIs require a key, so we need to copy this and use it in our request URL. Let's go ahead and paste this key into our Python script so we don't forget it. We'll create a variable API key and then paste in our key and wrap it in quotes so it's saved as a string. Now that we have the API key, let's go back to the API page to see how to use their API. We'll click on the current weather data API doc link. Then we'll scroll down to the first section on calling current weather by city name. This first example is what we're going to use. We can see that it has a spot to fill in our API key and a spot to fill in the city we want. Let's copy that URL into our script so we can give it a try. Let's create a variable named URL and then paste in the example URL and wrap it in quotes. Now we need to edit this so that it uses variables for the city name and the API key. Before we do that, let's create a variable named city and assign it to the string Orlando. Now let's go back and edit the URL. We'll end the string before the city name placeholder and then replace it with concatenating the city variable we just created. Then we'll do the same for the API key. Now that we have this request URL all set, we can use the request library to get the data from this URL. First, we need to import the request library. Then, after the URL is created, we can create a request variable and set it equal to calling request.get and pass in our URL. Then we can get the JSON from the request by creating a JSON variable and assigning it to calling request.json. Finally, we can print the JSON. If we run this, we can see we get an error that we have an invalid URL. Oops, that's because we left off the HTTP part. So if we add that and run again, we get our JSON output. We can see that there is a lot of information here to sift through. So we're going to copy all of this JSON, and then we're going to go to a website that will help us format it so we can read it easier. Let's do a web search for JSON formatter and go to the first link. Then we'll paste in our JSON and click process. Then we can see the JSON with the tabs makes it a little easier to read. So we'll copy this JSON and then back in VS Code, let's create a new file called weather.json and paste in the formatted JSON here. Now we can see we have a dictionary with keys for coord or coordinates, weather, base, and main, and a few more like wind. Inside weather, we can see a list with one dictionary inside with a key for description. That looks like a description of the forecast, which is what we want to use. And then inside the dictionary with the key main, we can see a temp min and temp max, which we'll also use. But actually, if we look at the values, they're around 290, which is not a measurement I'm used to. So let's check the API docs for units and see if we can add Fahrenheit. And we can see under units, we can add units as imperial. So we'll add that piece to our URL. And let's go ahead and print the JSON again. Then we can format it using the formatter, and then we'll copy that formatted JSON back into our JSON file. And now we can see the temperature units look a lot more familiar in the 60-degree range. So now we need to figure out how to get those values out. For the description, let's create a variable called description and set it equal to json.get and then pass in the key for weather. Then remember, weather has a list with only one element. I know this is a weird format to have a list with only one element, but sometimes that happens with JSON. We'll need square brackets to get the element at index 0 in the list. Then again, we want to get the value at the key description, so we'll use .get again and pass in the key description. Now let's print this out and see if it works. We'll create a print statement with today's forecast is, description. And if we run this, we can see today's forecast is overcast clouds. Okay, great. So the description is working and we don't need to print the JSON anymore. So let's remove that print statement. Now let's work on getting the minimum and maximum temperatures. We can see under the key main, there's a dictionary with the key temp_min. So let's create a variable called temp_min and set it equal to json.get and pass in the key main, and then call .get again for the inner dictionary. Then we'll pass in the key temp_min. Let's add a print statement for this, and we'll print the minimum temperature is, temp_min. Now if we look at the JSON again, we should be able to get the maximum temperature in the same way as the minimum. So let's just copy the code we had there and then change temp_min to temp_max in those two places. We can also copy and paste the print statement, but replace minimum with maximum and replace the variable with the temp_max variable. Now if we run our program, we can see the description and the min and max values printed to the screen. Great! Our program successfully requests weather data from the API, parses the JSON, and then prints out the weather values we want to the screen.